The next person I'd like to call is Mr. Peter Van Tuijl. Peter Van Tuijl is the Executive Director for the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict, Global Secretariat. We refer to it with its acronym GPAC. Peter has a vast experience especially in Asia, looking at NGO accountability, human rights, and transitional civil society. He is responsible for the policy, strategy, and overall management of GPAC. Peter has been a program advisor and civil society expert with the UNDP-led Partnership for Governance Reform in Indonesia. He has also been a senior technical advisor to Project Combating Corruption in Indonesian National Police under the International Criminal Investigative Training Assistance Program. Peter is also a co-editor with Lisa Jordan of NGO Accountability, Politics, Principles, and Innovations, and the book has recently been published, recently been translated into Chinese with the Renmin University in 2008. I welcome Mr. Peter Van Tuijl.
Good morning. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Florence. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very grateful for the invitation by NPI Africa to present the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict here, where NPI Africa is working with us in our still quite young network of civil society organizations. NPI is helping us here in the Eastern Central Africa region. Emmanuel Bombande, who happens to be the chair of our board, is overseeing the network in West Africa, and Vasu Gounden is doing the same in the Southern African region. GPAC is an effort of civil society to look at issues of conflict and conflict prevention within a global scope. In today's world, violence, as you all know, plays out across national borders. Also, if we look at the situation in Kenya, it would be a mistake to look at Kenya alone. There are connections to issues in the regions, to Somalia, for example, and many other issues that also affect the situation here in Kenya. In GPAC, we try to create a platform, a place where civil society organizations can work together to support each other, to learn, to exchange information, to coach each other if you wish. And I have the pleasure and the honor to direct the Global Secretariat of GPAC, which is based in the Netherlands. Together, of course, we also communicate a lot with regional organizations, with the United Nations, with governments, with the private sector. Why are we here today? I think we are first of all here to support the efforts of our Kenyan friends in civil society and in the media to work towards a peaceful election. We're here to share information and experiences, and you will hear a lot more from Emmanuel and Vasu in particular about other regions in the world, other regions here and experiences here in Africa. But we're also here to learn. Because this, for me, if I look back at the 2007 elections here in Kenya, is an important reflection. Yes, we of course mourn the victims of violence after the 2007 elections. So there is also the inspiration that we take from what has happened in Kenya after the 2007 elections. It is not only a negative story, I would say. And I remember at one point there was an NPI representative in Guatemala, I think, places that probably people in Kenya not often think of. And how enthusiastic people were here and how inspired they were to hear the story of what you have done here in this room and elsewhere after violence erupted in Kenya. So I think it's important to take hold of that if we look at the situation right now and the concerns that we may have. Many things have happened in Kenya since 2007. Many examples of institutional reform, a very successful referendum to accept a new constitution, changes in the security sector, in government, and so on. Is it enough? Well, that is a question that we can, of course, always debate, but there have definitely been a lot of developments. One of the lessons learned for us also, again, in Kenya, was how important it is that civil society and media work together. And for me, the frame to look at the relationship between civil society and media is really freedom and responsibilities. For the media, the freedom of expression is the fundamental point of departure, and as we all know, freedom of expression is not evident in many countries in the world. And for us as civil society, it's freedom of assembly and freedom of association, because apart from our families, as an individual person, we need the freedom to come together and work together to do something against poverty, to support women, to fight violence. But freedoms come with responsibilities. And I think that is the important thing to keep in mind when we have further discussions today. That we as civil society, as media, and of course also as other actors, we have to take our responsibilities when we look and when we are maybe critical about the way that the institutions do their work, or maybe not do their work or not so perfect. Because yes, Kenya still has many problems. While I was preparing myself for this mission, there are so many reports produced with what in our jargon are called conflict drivers. The conflict drivers in Kenya. There's still many. Kenya has a lot of issues in the transition that it's in. And those issues can and will not be resolved by the upcoming elections in one go, of course. But the important thing is that for everyone to realize that violence is in any case not a solution to Kenya's problems. Violence will only do damage. Violence will only cause enormous havoc in society. So everybody has to take up their responsibility to work towards a peaceful election. I think that's where we can and should join hands. So we are here to support that process, to share our experiences and to learn from you. And our hope is that, soon enough after the upcoming elections, within our global network, we can go out again, like we did after 2007, and we can share the story of Kenya in other places in the world and say, look, people were concerned before the elections in 2013, but they managed to do it peacefully, and they managed to make further progress for a better Kenya in the transition of the country. That's really my hope, that we will be able to do that soon enough. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the discussions.
Thank you very much. And so at this point, I welcome Mr. Irungo Houghton, Oxfam Pan-Africa Director. And anything else Irungo would like to say about himself, he'll tell you. I asked him what I should say at this point when introducing him, and he said, if you'd like to know more about him and what he does, please feel free to see him after the session. Karibu sana.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, I'm going to make two requests of you. The first is that you engage very actively in this conversation. It's a real opportunity, I think, 21 days from the elections for us to have a strategic reflection about what is possible in this space and also what is possible post-elections, because as we know from 2008, the real challenge sometimes comes after the election. The second request is that if you have mobile devices, now we don't just call them phones, there are all kinds of things from tablets to computers and so on. If you can put them on silent so that they don't interrupt us and interrupt the cameras. So let's kick off a little bit. I'd like to distinguish this conversation first and foremost as a conversation between two groups of two constituencies or two sectors that have actually quite a lot in common. The first constituency, as we know, is the media workers, the people who, if we did not have them, the world would be a very narrow, small space, really only accessible through what we physically connect with. The second group is the peace workers, the people who, at times of challenge and tension, are the ones who step into that space to reduce tempers, to reduce the possibility of violence, and to transform that conflict or that violence into something that is beneficial for all. And these are two, sometimes seen as two different constituencies. What connects them is this. all violence begins in language. It either begins in the spoken word or it begins in the printed word. So there is a linkage between those of you who are media workers and those of you who are peace workers. That ultimately conflict will emerge as a result of something that is said or not said. But more interestingly for me is that the resolution of conflict, the transformation of that conflict, will always end up in language. It will end up in the word, right? Now, not the word as necessarily seen for many of you in the Bible, but even the word as it is seen in the streets and in the villages and in the homes of all of us. So I think there's a really interesting space we have now to think a little bit about how do we restore our credibility and our integrity, not just to the international community, but also to ourselves, that we can elect our leaders, we can mandate our leaders, and we can covenant our leaders in a way in which they are clear what their responsibility is, but they're also clear that the responsibility we bestow on them is not to mobilize us to kill each other. Okay, so this is the first distinction that I'd like to generate. And what we have this morning is a number of great speakers. The order that we will take the speakers in is slightly changed, and we're going to give an opportunity, I think, to allow the Kenyans to go first, and then invite our visitors and our friends to comment with the benefit of the first two speakers. So I'm going to invite very quickly Dr. Levi Obonyo, who some of you will know, particularly those of you in the media. He's based at the School of Communications at Daystar University. He is the immediate former chairperson of the Media Council of Kenya, a leading pivotal organization in the Kenyan context, not just within the media, but also in terms of the entire fabric of this country, as it is essentially the, I guess what you'd call the family body, the association of media practitioners and media owners. So that is an important space that he occupies. And then we'll invite Celine to follow. So let me invite, with no further ado, Levi. He will speak for about 10 minutes. I've asked them all to speak for about 10 minutes. And they are free to use the podium, the laptop, or the chair, whichever instrument of communication.